What's up guys, I'm BTC, got a bunch of cool stuff for you today, the most common names in Overwatch, what your rank really means, and the best heroes for Season 12. Couple of neat things. These are courtesy of the guys over at BlizzTrack. They had a bot running on the Play Overwatch website, which was basically just checking all of the player names and what the ranks were. So this first thing here is a little cloud map of all of the most commonly used names in Overwatch. And as you can see, Night Knight is basically the most common name. Shadowstorm is up there, Genji and Reaper as well. There's also a Battle Pants on the bottom right. You can pause the video and check it all out if you want to. I just thought that this was kind of neat, something I wanted to show you. Now, the next thing was that they also checked out the ranks of all these people. Now, even if you have your account set to private, this information was still on the website, so they were able to gather all the data and find out where people were in the ranks and stuff. This next chart is for the PC players. There's two things I want to point out. At the 500 mark, that's because Blizzard doesn't track under 500, and at the 3,000 mark, that's from people who just stopped playing and their account rank decayed down to 3,000. But for the rest of it, it's pretty much a standard bell curve. Next thing that I thought was really interesting was the player percentage breakdown for each rank, and there's one for PC, Xbox, and PS4 here. And I think people really undervalue how much skill you actually need to have in order to get into Diamond. Because when you look at this for PC, for example, if you just crack into Diamond, you are in the top 8.69% of the entire player base on PC. And if you make it into High Diamond, you're basically the top 2% of all those players. If you make it into Master, you're, the top 1.91%, unless you make it close, and then you're already past the top 1% if you get even most of the way into Master and towards Grandmaster. And then I also thought it was kind of interesting, you look at PS4, that's really, really exclusive at the top. Grandmaster is only 0.11% of the entire PS4 player base, and Master is less than 1%. So it's kind of interesting. You can pause the video and check it out, read all the stats if you want. Moving on to Season 12, what are the best heroes to use and what kind of comp should you be trying for? Well, it really depends. Are you in the lower bracket or the upper bracket? Lower bracket, bronze through plat, upper bracket, diamond through GM. And I know a lot of times when people talk about what are the best heroes for the next season, they don't take into account the fact that there's a lot of different ways of coordination, levels of communication in the different brackets. And you can't just say, oh, dive is the best thing to run, because if a group of silver players who half of them aren't even in voice chat, if you're trying to run a dive or something, it's not going to be a good time. So there are certain comps that just work better in the different groups. So let's start with the lower bracket comps. I think the best thing to run right now is probably a version of GOAT. That's 3 tanks and 3 supports. If you're defending, I would suggest going with the more anchor-based version of this lineup. That's going to center around either a Reinhardt or an Orisa, and they're going to be backed up usually by a Roadhog, a Zarya, or you could even throw something like a D.Va in there as well. It doesn't always have to be completely anchor-based for that. But for the supports, you're going to want to have a Mercy, maybe an Ana or a Moira, definitely Brigitte in the lower brackets. But the real key is you have to have either a Moira or an Ana. You have to have at least one of those, because those are the characters that are going to be able to put out that massive amount of healing that the tanks are going to need. That's going to keep them around for a very long time. So you have to have at least one of those. You could run both, and then you just have a massive amount of healing, and then your tank should never ever die. But it might be a little bit too much, and you might want to have like a Zenyatta for the Discord, or maybe a Mercy for the damage amp or something like that. The other version that's generally better for attacking teams is going to be the dive-oriented one, and that's going to have D.Va, Winston, possibly Hammond, or maybe even a Zarya just to be able to bubble the D.Va or the Winston, one of those. You're also going to want to probably have a Lucio and a Moira, and again, you might have a Mercy, or you might have an Ana as well, just kind of sitting in the back line. but that Ana's definitely going to have to be able to have line of sight to your team in order to heal them, and a lot of maps like Numbani, for example, just don't really give you those sight lines that you need, so that can actually be kind of problematic, in which case you might want to have something like a Lucio, a Zenyatta, and a Mercy for your 3 healers. For the upper bracket players, you can definitely run those 2 comps I just mentioned, but there's also a little bit more variety. You could try running Disrupt, which focuses more on Doomfist, Sombra, and Hammond, and getting a lot of that information from Sombra so that everyone can jump to the location that they need to and just take out the backline. You can also try running variations of the triple tank dive, where you have Hammond, Winston, and D.Va, followed up by a Doomfist. Instead of running 3 supports, you just have that. Or you could, of course, still try to run a Tracer or something. However, if the enemy team is running a Brigitte, then you're definitely going to not want to run that Tracer. But from what I've been seeing, Brigitte is getting played significantly less than she has been before her. This is something that I don't think a lot of people quite realize, but in the upper bracket, particularly Masters and GM, Brigitte's usage has been dropping. Her pick rate, her win rate, they keep going down week after week, and she just isn't being used as much because a lot of the other stuff that's going on just counters her really easily. I actually am working on a full how to counter Brigitte video because I know that a lot of the lower bracket players are still having a bunch of problems with the hero, but upper bracket, I mean, she's just not really an issue anymore. For example, in Season 11, the top 500, only 10 people used Brigitte. One last thing I want to point out is that they increased the number of avoid slots from 2 to 3. Although this really doesn't change much. I actually was in a weird situation where I had a couple of people who were throwing or being disruptive, and I avoided them so that I wouldn't get them in the next match. And in order to do that, I had to remove someone. And sure enough, when the next match started, the people I avoided were on the enemy team, and the guy that I had just removed was on my team. And that just basically turned into a mess. It was basically the fact that their team had more throwers than mine, so we somehow managed to end up with the win. It was just a terrible match all around, though. I don't think adding it up to 3 is really going to change anything. It would need to be a lot more significant than that. At least 5, probably better at like 10 or something. There are some other issues that need to be addressed because there's definitely way more throwers now than there ever has been before. Solo queue is just a nightmare. I do have some ideas on how that can be fixed, but we'll have to save that for another video. That's going to be it for this one. Hope you found some of that info interesting and helpful. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Also, come hang out in my Discord server and my Twitch live stream. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see what kind of cool VIP rewards you can get, check the links down below. And remember, always blame the controller because it's never your fault.